Good morning, everyone. Today, I want to talk about something we all experience: frustration, anger, and the feeling of being bothered by others. Whether it's a rude comment, a disrespectful coworker, or someone cutting you off in traffic, life throws plenty of triggers our way. But what if I told you it's possible, completely possible, to never get angry or bothered by anyone? The first and most foundational truth when it comes to never getting angry or bothered by anyone is understanding that your peace is your personal responsibility. Many people go through life believing that their emotions are controlled by external forces, what others say, how others behave, or what life throws at them. This belief system makes us reactive rather than proactive. We become emotional puppets pulled by the strings of other people's moods, words, and actions. But once you internalize the idea that you are the only one who can choose how you feel, a new level of freedom opens up. Let's put this in perspective. If someone insults you, you may feel a surge of anger. That reaction feels automatic, but it's not compulsory, it's conditioned. From childhood, we've been taught to react to disrespect with defensiveness, to rudeness with offense. But just because a response feels automatic doesn't mean it's uncontrollable. Like any habit, emotional reactivity can be unlearned. Your feelings are not dictated by others, they are shaped by your interpretation, and your interpretations can change. Imagine having a remote control that only you can use, one that adjusts your emotional state regardless of what's happening around you. That's what responsibility for your peace really means. It's not denial or suppression of emotion, it's about taking ownership. When someone upsets you, you can ask, what story am I telling myself about this? Why does this bother me? In asking those questions, you shift from blaming to observing. You gain perspective, you gain control. This mindset doesn't mean you become passive or indifferent. It means you become centered. Owning your peace is not about ignoring disrespect or pretending bad behavior doesn't exist. It's about deciding that no one else is worthy of dictating your internal state. You can acknowledge someone's actions and still choose not to internalize them. You can draw boundaries without giving your emotional energy away. That's strength, not weakness. Taking responsibility for your peace also requires dropping the victim mindset. This doesn't mean your pain or frustration isn't real. It means you stop assigning the cause of your emotions to someone else. If you say, they made me mad, you've handed them power over your emotional world. Instead, try saying, I felt anger in response to what they said, but I choose how I manage it. That small shift in language reflects a major shift in mindset, from powerless to powerful. This concept can be challenging, especially if you've been conditioned to believe that being angry or offended is a justified reaction to mistreatment. Society often validates emotional reactivity, rewarding it as a sign of passion or strength. But in truth, anger is often just an emotional reflex that reveals a lack of control. Real power lies in restraint, in choosing clarity over chaos. When you realize that your calm is your choice, you stop waiting for others to behave better and start focusing on mastering yourself. In practical terms, this means developing habits that reinforce your emotional independence. Start by noticing your triggers. Write them down. Observe your inner dialogue when someone bothers you. What are you telling yourself in that moment? Are you catastrophizing? Are you taking it personally? The more aware you become of your mental patterns, the easier it becomes to redirect them. Awareness is the first step to breaking the cycle of reaction. Ultimately, understanding that your peace is your responsibility is the gateway to emotional mastery. It's the foundation upon which all other tools like empathy, boundaries, and mindfulness are built. When you stop expecting others to create your calm and start creating it yourself, you move from being a passenger in your life to the driver. It doesn't mean you never feel upset. It means you don't stay there, and no one else gets to decide how long you stay in that state but you. In moments of tension or confrontation, our instinctual response is to react quickly, often without thinking. This is especially true when we feel attacked, disrespected, or emotionally provoked. But one of the most powerful tools in emotional mastery is simple in concept, yet transformative in practice. Pause before you react. That pause, even if it's just a few seconds long, creates the space needed for wisdom to enter. It allows your higher self to step in before your emotions take the wheel. The reason this pause is so important is because our first reaction is almost always shaped by emotion, not logic. When someone offends us, our nervous system activates the fight or flight response. We feel a rush of adrenaline, our heart rate increases, our breathing gets shallow. In that state, we don't respond with clarity, we respond with instinct. And more often than not, that instinct is to defend, attack, or shut down. But if we interrupt this cycle. Even for a moment, we shift from reflex to response. Pausing before reacting doesn't mean suppressing your feelings or pretending you don't care. It means giving yourself a mental time out, a moment to assess, reflect, and reframe the situation. It means asking yourself questions like, is this really worth my energy? Or what outcome do I want here? This simple habit reprograms your relationship with stress. It retrains your brain to respond with intention rather than impulse. One practical way to implement this pause is to use your breath as an anchor. The moment you feel triggered, inhale slowly and deeply through your nose, hold for a second, and exhale through your mouth. Do this 3 times. Those few seconds of conscious breathing can be enough to interrupt the emotional surge. In that brief window, you begin to detach from the heat of the moment. You become the observer of your emotions, not the slave to them. Another benefit of the pause is that it gives you time to consider the bigger picture. Is the person who annoyed you really trying to hurt you? Or are they projecting their own stress, fear, or ignorance? Is this a pattern in them? Or are you perhaps carrying some unresolved sensitivity of your own? The pause gives you space to ask better questions, and better questions lead to better reactions, or no reaction at all. It's also important to recognize that reacting instantly often escapes conflict, while a calm pause can completely disarm it. When someone expects you to snap back and you don't, when they expect to provoke you and you remain composed, they lose control of the dynamic. Your stillness becomes your strength. You don't need to match someone's chaos with your own. A pause is not weakness, it is restraint, and restraint is a sign of real maturity. Pausing also helps protect your long-term peace. How many times have we said something in anger and regretted it minutes later? How many relationships have suffered not because of what happened, but because of how someone reacted in the heat of the moment? When you pause, you protect your integrity. You give yourself time to respond in alignment with your values rather than your emotional spikes. You remain consistent with who you want to be. Ultimately, the pause is where your power lives. You can't always control what happens to you, but you can control what happens through you. That split-second decision to pause is what separates reaction from response, noise from clarity, and chaos from composure. In that sacred space, you choose whether to feed the fire or to remain centered in your peace. One of the most effective ways to free yourself from getting angry or bothered by others is to recognize a deep psychological truth. Everyone is acting from their own story. Every person you encounter is operating from a personal set of beliefs, memories, fears, insecurities, values, and unconscious conditioning, most of which have nothing to do with you. When someone behaves in a way that upsets or confuses you, it is rarely, if ever, a direct reflection of your worth. It is almost always a reflection of their internal world. Think about it. A person who grew up in a hostile or neglectful environment may develop habits of defensiveness, aggression, or coldness. Someone who constantly fears rejection may come across as overly controlling or distant. A person drowning in stress might lash out over the smallest inconvenience. Their behavior might affect you, but it didn't originate because of you. It originated in the story they've been telling themselves, often for years, maybe decades, about how the world works and who they need to be in it. When you internalize this understanding, you begin to take things less personally. If someone cuts you off in traffic or snaps at you in a meeting, your default reaction might be irritation or offense. But with deeper awareness, you pause and think, this person might be overwhelmed, afraid, or in pain. That simple shift allows compassion to replace outrage. You're not excusing their behavior, you're simply recognizing it's not yours to carry emotionally. This perspective is not only liberating, it's also deeply humanizing. Everyone is living inside a mind full of invisible wounds and unseen battles. Many people walk through life armored, not because they are cruel, but because they are scared. Fear of being judged, rejected, or hurt again drives much of the behavior that bothers us. When we remember this, we develop empathy, and empathy is one of the greatest shields against anger. To act from your higher self, it helps to remember that no one is the villain in their own story. Even the people who offend or hurt others usually believe they are justified. Their actions, however wrong or damaging, are filtered through their perspective. They may be unaware of how they affect others because they're so consumed by their own narrative. Understanding this doesn't mean tolerating abuse, it means releasing the emotional burden of taking it personally. Another way to look at it is this. When someone criticizes you unfairly or treats you rudely, they are often projecting something unresolved within themselves. Their story is leaking into the moment, and you're just a character in it. Without this awareness, it's easy to get pulled into their script, to respond in kind, to defend, to retaliate. But when you remember that their behavior is about them, not you, you're free to step out of their story and stay rooted in your own. Developing this mindset also helps you maintain emotional neutrality. Instead of seeing someone as bad or mean, you start seeing them as human and hurt. You don't need to like their behavior, but you stop needing to battle it. You stop assigning moral value to every interaction and start seeing people as complex, flawed individuals trying and often failing to cope with life. This shift drastically reduces how often you feel attacked, offended, or disturbed by others. In the end, recognizing that everyone is acting from their own story is not about excusing harmful behavior. It's about understanding it so you don't absorb it. When you stop assuming that others' actions are about you, you stop giving them the power to control your emotional climate. You become an observer, not a reactor. And that's when you begin to experience real freedom, not from people, but from the weight of their unprocessed. One of the most overlooked causes of anger and emotional disturbance is an internal, often unconscious need to be right. This need isn't about truth, it's about ego. It's the part of us that feels threatened when someone disagrees, corrected when challenged, or insulted when our opinion isn't validated. Holding onto the need to be right transforms conversations into confrontations and differences into battles. But when you let go of that need, you free yourself from a massive source of inner conflict. At its core, the need to be right is a form of insecurity. It stems from the belief that being wrong makes us less valuable, less intelligent, or less respected. For some, it's a defense mechanism built up over years of criticism or not being heard. For others, it's rooted in perfectionism, the idea that any mistake is a flaw in identity. But the truth is that being wrong is a part of being human. Admitting it takes strength, and paradoxically, letting go of the need to be right often makes people trust and respect you more, not less. Think about how many arguments spiral out of control, not because of the topic itself, but because neither person is willing to surrender the upper hand. The conversation becomes less about resolution and more about winning. You start defending your position, not because it still makes sense, but because your pride is now attached to it. In those moments, the conversation stops being about what's true and becomes about who's right. And that shift breeds tension, resentment, and eventually disconnection. When you release the need to be right, you gain the ability to truly listen. You're no longer waiting for your turn to speak or scanning for flaws in the other person's argument. You listen to understand, not to refute. This not only calms the emotional energy of the interaction, but also deepens your relationships. People feel safer, more seen, and more valued around someone who doesn't need to dominate the conversation. It creates space for real dialogue, the kind that builds bridges instead of walls. Letting go of the need to be right also increases your mental flexibility. You become more open to learning, to growing, and to seeing things from new angles. You stop needing to defend every belief, every opinion, every decision. You allow for the possibility that your perspective is limited, not because you're wrong, but because you're evolving. This humility protects you from the emotional rigidity that keeps so many people stuck in cycles of defensiveness and frustration. On a deeper level, when you no longer need to be right, you stop taking things so personally. A disagreement is no longer a threat to your identity, it's just a difference. You realize that other people are allowed to see things differently. Their perspective doesn't invalidate yours. You don't have to agree, but you also don't have to engage in a tug of war over who has the final word. This detachment creates immense emotional freedom. You no longer feel pulled into debates, offended by opposition, or addicted to validation. This mindset also protects your peace in day-to-day situations. Whether it's a disagreement with a partner, a frustrating moment at work, or a political conversation with a friend, you get to decide. Do I need to prove myself here, or do I want peace? Most of the time, peace is the better choice. That doesn't mean staying silent about things that matter. It means choosing your battles wisely and disengaging when your ego is the only thing trying to stay in the ring. Ultimately, letting go of the need to be right isn't about surrendering your values or becoming passive. It's about choosing connection over control, growth over pride, and clarity over conflict. It's about becoming more rooted in your self-worth so that disagreement doesn't shake you. When your sense of self no longer depends on always being correct, you become emotionally untouchable, not because you never get challenged, but because you no longer fear being wrong. One of the most misunderstood aspects of emotional peace is the role of boundaries. Many people believe that to be calm or spiritual means to tolerate everything and everyone without resistance. But in truth, inner peace is not about becoming passive, it's about becoming firm and clear without being reactive. Setting boundaries is essential for protecting your mental and emotional space. But the key is doing it without emotional charge, without anger, guilt, or the need to justify yourself. A boundary is simply a declaration of what you will and will not allow in your life. It could be verbal, behavioral, physical, or energetic. But where most people go wrong is in the delivery of the boundary. When boundaries are set from a place of emotional exhaustion or resentment, they often sound like explosions. "I've had enough," or "you never listen to me," rather than calm, direct statements. The problem with emotionally charged boundaries is that they escalate conflict instead of resolving it. They trigger the other person's defenses and dilute your message. Setting boundaries without emotion means practicing neutral firmness. You state what you need, what is acceptable, or what will no longer be tolerated with clarity but without aggression. For example, "I'm not available for conversations that involve shouting," or "I'm going to step away now. We can talk when things are calmer." These statements are powerful not because they are loud, but because they are controlled. They reflect a person who knows their worth and no longer negotiates it. When you set boundaries without emotion, you no longer need to convince the other person to agree with you. That's the trap many fall into, seeking validation or approval for the boundary being set. But boundaries are not negotiations, they are declarations. You are not asking permission to protect your peace. You are informing others of the standards that allow you to remain mentally and emotionally stable. And when you stop trying to win people over, you gain the ability to speak from clarity rather than defensiveness. This approach is especially useful with difficult or emotionally manipulative people. When you remain calm and assertive, you deprive them of the emotional reaction they often seek. You don't feed their chaos. You don't match their energy. And because you're not lashing out, they have less ground to accuse you of being unreasonable. Emotionally detached boundaries expose behavior more effectively than emotional outbursts ever could. Stillness is not weakness, it's strategy. Setting boundaries without emotion also helps you avoid the emotional hangover that often follows conflict. When you speak calmly, you speak grounded. You don't walk away replaying the argument, questioning what you said, or feeling ashamed. You remain aligned with your values. That sense of internal consistency is what creates long-term peace. It's the difference between reacting impulsively and responding intentionally. To cultivate this ability, you must practice regulating your emotions before setting the boundary. This may mean taking a breath, walking away for a moment, or writing down what you want to say. The goal is to speak from your highest self, the version of you that values peace more than dominance. Over time, this becomes a skill. You learn to speak with strength and calmness simultaneously. Your tone becomes your power. Ultimately, setting boundaries without emotion is an act of self-respect. It means you're no longer at the mercy of other people's behavior or approval. You no longer need to be angry to take action, nor do you need to justify your limits to those who don't respect them. You simply act in alignment with your values and let your consistency speak louder than your volume. And in doing so, you create a life where your peace is protected not by force, but by clarity and self-possession. One of the most transformative shifts you can make in how you relate to others and to your own peace is learning to replace judgment with empathy. Judgment is often a reflex. Someone behaves badly, speaks rudely, or acts in a way that violates your values, and your mind immediately labels them selfish, stupid, inconsiderate. These labels might feel justified, even satisfying. in the moment. But what they really do is pull you into a state of internal agitation. They close your heart and cloud your clarity. Empathy, by contrast, opens space for understanding and dissolves much of the tension before it ever builds. Empathy doesn't mean agreeing with or excusing bad behavior. It means recognizing that people are complicated and driven by internal forces you cannot see. The person who was rude to you at the store may be going through a divorce. The colleague who constantly interrupts may have grown up in a household where they were never heard. The friend who canceled plans, again, might be struggling with social anxiety or depression. This doesn't mean their actions are okay. It means their actions aren't always personal. Practicing empathy keeps you from internalizing other people's dysfunction. Judgment, on the other hand, is often about our own discomfort. When someone behaves in a way that triggers us, we rush to judge as a way to feel superior or in control. They are immature, we tell ourselves. They are just toxic. But when we take the time to look deeper, we often see that our judgments are shortcuts, oversimplified conclusions that help us avoid vulnerability or complexity. Empathy forces us to pause and reflect. It invites us to step into someone else's experience, even briefly, and ask, what might this person be carrying? This mental and emotional shift benefits you first and foremost. It keeps your energy clean. When you judge others, even silently, you carry that harshness with you. You rehearse negative thoughts, feel righteous indignation, and stay stuck in emotional loops. But when you practice empathy, your internal environment softens. You experience more peace, not because the world has changed, but because you are not fueling the same fires. You start seeing others through the lens of shared humanity rather than opposition. Another powerful truth is that empathy makes you more emotionally resilient. People who are quick to judge often feel destabilized by others' behavior. They are constantly reacting to how others show up, offended, irritated, or disappointed. But empathy offers a cushion. It gives you psychological flexibility. When someone falls short, you don't fall with them. You observe it, understand it, and maintain your balance. You don't get pulled into a storm of emotions every time someone acts out of alignment. Moreover, empathy helps you break reactive patterns in long-term relationships. Think of how many arguments and grudges are rooted not in what was said or done, but in what was assumed. They don't care, they did that on purpose. These assumptions turn small issues into major emotional rifts. But when you pause and ask, what pain might be behind this behavior, you open the door to deeper connection. You give others and yourself the grace to be human, to be imperfect, to be in process. This doesn't mean you never speak up or hold people accountable. In fact, empathy makes you better at doing so. Why? Because when people feel understood, they are more open to change. When they feel judged, they shut down. Empathy softens defenses. It allows you to say, I can see you're struggling, but this behavior isn't okay. That's how real communication begins, not through blame, but through shared understanding. Judgment demands obedience. Empathy invites transformation. Ultimately, choosing empathy over judgment is about choosing peace over pride. It's about living from the awareness that everyone, including you, is doing the best they can with the tools, wounds, and awareness they have at the time. It doesn't make everything right, but it makes it easier not to carry every wrong. When you practice empathy, you don't let others walk all over you. You simply refuse to let them live rent-free in your head. Just as the body requires regular exercise to stay strong and resilient, the mind requires daily training to remain calm, clear, and in control. Emotional mastery does not come from one-time insights or motivational moments. It is the result of consistent mental discipline. Most people live in a reactive state because they allow their minds to run unchecked. Thoughts jump from fear to anger, from insecurity to resentment, and each one of those thoughts fuels a corresponding emotional response. If you don't train your mind, it will be trained by the world. And the world is often chaotic, judgmental, and noisy. Training your mind means intentionally cultivating the thoughts and perspectives that support inner peace. It's about observing your thinking instead of identifying with every thought. Without this training, you're pulled around by every trigger, every rude comment, every negative assumption. But with mental discipline, you learn to pause, assess the thought, and choose how much power to give it. This doesn't mean you never have negative thoughts. It means those thoughts no longer drive your emotions automatically. Meditation is one of the most powerful tools for this kind of training. By sitting in silence and observing the mind, you begin to see how often it wanders, judges, fears, or fixates. At first, this might feel overwhelming, like trying to tame a wild animal. But with time, meditation teaches you to witness thoughts without getting swept up in them. You realize you can watch a thought arise and fade without reacting to it. This practice builds what is known as the gap, the space between stimulus and response. And within that space lies your freedom. Affirmations and intentional self-talk are also essential components of daily mental training. You can't control every thought that pops into your head, but you can feed your mind with thoughts that support calmness, clarity, and strength. Saying things like, I remain calm no matter what, or I respond, I don't react, might seem simple, but repeated often enough, these statements reshape the mental environment you live in. They create new mental habits, just as physical exercise creates new muscular strength. Another aspect of mental training is reflection, taking time each day, even for 5 minutes, to journal or review how you responded to situations helps sharpen awareness. Did you overreact? Did you judge someone unfairly? Did you stay calm when things got difficult? This kind of honest reflection isn't about guilt or shame. It's about building skill. You become a better emotional navigator by learning from your experiences, not just surviving them. Over time, you start to see patterns, and then you can work to change them. Mind training also involves guarding what you expose your mind to. The media you consume, the conversations you engage in, the environments you choose, all of these influence your inner landscape. If you constantly feed your mind with outrage, gossip, or fear-based content, your nervous system will reflect that. But if you surround yourself with calm, truth-centered information and people who value peace, your mind will mirror that too. You become what you repeat, and your emotional responses are largely a reflection of what you've been rehearsing. Discipline is essential. Just as you wouldn't expect to be physically fit after one workout, you can't expect to be emotionally unshakable after one meditation or a single self-help book. Mental clarity is built slowly through repetition. There will be setbacks, days when your reactions get the better of you, when frustration overtakes calm. But that's not failure, that's training. Each moment you catch yourself and return to awareness, you strengthen the mental muscles that hold you steady. Ultimately, training your mind daily is about making peace your default rather than your exception. It's about becoming so practiced in awareness and emotional balance that calmness becomes your home, not just a vacation spot. When you make this kind of practice a lifestyle, you stop being at the mercy of external events or difficult people. You develop an unshakable center. And from that center, life no longer disturbs you the way it used to. In a world full of noise, misunderstandings, and unpredictable people, true power lies not in controlling others, but in mastering yourself. When you begin to live with awareness, empathy, discipline, and clarity, you create a space inside you that no one else can touch. You stop giving away your peace in exchange for temporary victories, reactions, or validation. You learn to observe instead of absorb, to respond instead of react, and to walk away not from weakness, but from wisdom. Remember, you are not here to fix everyone, argue with everyone, or be liked by everyone. You are here to protect your energy, grow in understanding, and walk through life with grace. Anger may knock on your door, but you no longer have to answer. Disturbance may call your name, but you no longer have to listen. The power to stay unbothered is not about isolation, it's about elevation. Train your mind, open your heart, honor your boundaries, and above all, commit to peace as a daily practice. Because once peace becomes your priority, no person, no situation, and no chaos will ever be able to steal it from you again. That is how you rise above it. And never get angry or bothered by anyone.